2 weeks into this 2025 football season, we knew all of a sudden that Notre Dame had to win 10 consecutive games to state its case for the College Football Playoff Committee. Now, after today's home finale, Notre Dame has won 9 consecutive days and made about as loud a statement as it could possibly make with a 70-7 triumph, romp, whatever you want to call it, against visiting Syracuse. 70-7, it was never that close. I'm John Brice of FootballScoop and Irish Illustrated. Very pleased to be joined by the veteran Tim Prister for tonight's Overtime Live. TP, your initial thoughts on Notre Dame's dominant blowout victory?
Well, I'm not surprised it was dominant. I think a few of us picked a shutout. I stopped shy of I didn't even get to 50 because I thought that, Notre Dame would be in a position to take their foot off the pedal, but it wasn't that kind of game. Notre Dame was scoring on interception returns and blocked punts. And so, they shot up to 21 points real quickly. And then after that, the offense didn't even gain 400 yards. I think that, a couple of the craziest stat to me is that Syracuse ran 80 plays and Notre Dame ran 39, but again, largely because of the defense, the big plays, and then the special teams. It was the kind of dominant performance that we expected. The numbers got out of control, of course. Notre Dame never even had to throw the football really of any note, but the running game was what we expected. Jeremiyah Love was what we expected. There's some Notre Dame records out there that he is now approaching, and we've been saying it for a few weeks. I realized that Ashton Jeanty rushed for 2,600 yards last year, and he didn't even win the Heisman. And I know that Jeremiyah Love's numbers won't compete with that, but the big plays, the spectacular play, the consistent breakaway plays that he puts up, he deserves to be in New York on December 13th. But more importantly, Notre Dame doing exactly what they had to do. That a lot of people made it a beauty contest after the vote Tuesday night. Pie in the face for the first person that blames Notre Dame for piling it on, because if you saw the game, that's not what happened. Notre Dame, they didn't even throw the ball. They didn't have to throw the ball, and they still just kept scoring points, John.
This is my favorite stat, and you had some great ones there, TP. Notre Dame, 70 points, 67 passing yards. 70 points, 67 passing yards. I don't know if we'll ever see a box score like that again anytime in our respective lives or careers, but nothing to me showcases the dominance more than that. I tweeted this early, or X'd this early since it's changed the name. Notre Dame was up 21-0 with 5 minutes and 15 or so seconds gone in the game and had not had an offensive snap. I don't ever know of a similar situation like that anywhere in college football, anywhere, not just big-time college football. I don't know of anything like that at any level. And, again, it was just a superlative performance for Notre Dame. The defense, as we talked about on the Irish Illustrated Insider podcast Thursday and again today in pregame instant analysis, this defense has been setting the tone. It continues to set the tone, and that was bad news within Syracuse offense that can barely set its formations, and that was the case today, TP.
Yeah, and their quarterback play, we talked about that during the week, John, and we didn't even see Ricky Collins, who was the guy that I was most critical of during the week. It would have been worse had they gone to him. And Joe Filardi, I feel bad for the kid. Considering that he came to Syracuse as a lacrosse player, I don't think he's an awful player. I just don't think that. Syracuse was beaten at the line of scrimmage, so he was pressured from the jump. He didn't have much chance. I said during the week we weren't sure. It's so hard to tell what kind of actual receiving core Syracuse has, because they didn't have anybody to get the football to them. When Steve Angeli went down, and look, Steve Angeli is not, on the verge of stringing Super Bowls together, but Steve Angeli on this team is a massive difference maker, because none of those other guys could pass them to, any semblance of offense. And Notre Dame's defense, as you said, Chris Ash's defense just continues to beat down opponents, the pass rush. I thought Traore would have a big game today, and he did. He was unstoppable. He doesn't always put up the largest numbers, but he was unstoppable. It was everything that we expected it to be, except some of these crazy numbers, including the 70-7 score.
Yeah, and here's another one that I'm loving. These statistical moments like this are fun and frankly quite hilarious at times. Notre Dame finishes with 16 first downs on offense and 15 TFLs by its defense. TP 15 TFLs. We know that's a season high. I don't know the last time a Notre Dame defense would have had that many TFLs in a game, but look, this is a common opponent that Notre Dame now has with Miami, and we can't avoid talking about that because they're going to continue to be compared, especially with the Hurricanes winning today. Not exactly a completely dominant effort. It was 27-17 late in that game. You think Miami's not scoreboard watching? They called timeouts to ensure that they could tack on another TD to make that final against Virginia Tech 34-17. And then another score of note. We do this just about every week on this show. Kansas State is leading Utah 47-37 right now with just 7 minutes to go in that game. That game at Utah, of course, Utah number 12 in the CFP this most recent week. Miami lurking at 13. Looks like Miami will have a great chance to jump Utah, which brings them closer to Notre Dame, which will raise some more of those comparisons. But again, TP, Notre Dame today just dominant in all phases. Didn't miss any kicks. Didn't try a field goal. Didn't need to, but they did not miss any kicks today. TP.
No, they didn't, and we know that Eric Schmidt can handle those extra points. We still don't know about field goals as they go to Stanford next weekend. I tell you what, JB, probably the biggest negative for me is, and I don't know if you heard any more about Kingston Viliamuasa's knee injury, but it's kind of like last year. He was injured late in the season. Did you hear any more? Was there clarity on how the severity of that injury?
No, frankly, I got up from my seat in the press box to come in here and do this show and bemoaned the fact that Marcus Freeman was not asked about KVA's injury in the post-game press conference. So we did not get any sort of update on that. Marcus said he did update Tate Johnson and indicated probably out 2 games. He said, maybe just 1 game, but I think his gut reaction to say he'd be out 2 games is what we're going to see. I think Tate Johnson will try to heal up that injured wrist and that Marcus said was hurt doing a punch-out drill in practice late in the week.
Yeah.
And then have 4 weeks between this week. You know, it would ultimately be right at about 30 days exactly between the injury and when Notre Dame would make its debut in the college football playoff, as long as the Irish nail it down. But obviously concerned about KVA. He's playing great ball. He's a huge part of a linebacker core that really is about as good as anywhere in college football.
How about Stroman rising to the occasion in place of Tate Johnson? I mean, right from the beginning, he was involved in, like 70% of the first, dozen plays or so, or 18 plays. He really stepped to the forefront. Boy, the safeties, the safety play. You get Ethan Long, who he thinks he has a pick 6. It's negated by a personal foul or roughing the quarterback penalty on Donovan Heinisch, and he ends up getting a pick anyway. So those guys back there just playing spectacular ball. No surprise, Mike Mickens' group rising to the occasion once again. Filardi, what did he end up?
Here you go. I've got it right here.
Yeah,
and
I'm sorry.
3 more interceptions, TP. So the Irish continue to be among the most ball-hawking secondary units or defenses in general of any team in college football. Filardi, 14-26. Obviously, no touchdowns, 83 yards, and 3 interceptions. So a 57.6 passer rating. CJ Carr, a mere 5 of 9, 49 yards, a nice touchdown pass to Will Pauling on a red zone play, one of those we've talked about. We've seen Jordan Faison run that same route. We saw Will Pauling run that route today on TP. And again, a day that Notre Dame's offense didn't click on all cylinders. It was never on the field long enough to, but a day that Jeremiyah Love also showed his superlative ability.
And the run defense stays stout. I was expecting them for the 6th time in 7 games to hold their opponent to 100 yards or less. Syracuse ended up sneaking over that and had 112, but it took them 50 carries to do it. Is there anything more astonishing than what Chris Ash has done? Just like the lack of popularity contest that, I mean, he would have finished last in every popularity contest imaginable. People wanted him fired, fire Ash, fire. Would you want Al Golden back?
that's
And you know, Al Golden was spectacular, but they weren't as good against the run as they are under Chris Ash. Now, a lot of that has to do with personnel. It has to do with the opponent, and I'm not putting down Al Golden in any way. He was spectacular, but Notre Dame continues to string together, you know, top-notch, great defensive coordinators, and Chris Ash is right there at the top of the list with the previous 3 or 4.
Yeah, one result that is not going to go Notre Dame's way tonight. Oregon is up 42-27 late on Southern Cal. Southern Cal drove it down into Oregon territory with a chance to make it a one-score game. Instead, turned the ball over, and now Oregon is moving to just run out the clock with 2 minutes left in that contest. And so
that's the one you really wanted today, right? I mean, that was one that if we could have picked one, that would have been mine. Because it would boost the resume of USC, and it would definitely have pushed Oregon behind Notre Dame. But it's not going to be that easy. They're going to have to. It's going to be a fight to the finish. And you talked about Miami winning and probably moving up a spot. That, I mean, if what the committee chair said the other day holds true, does that puts Notre Dame in the grouping? They group 4 teams together.
It makes it far more likely that you start getting those in the same coupling. It is they rank. They group 6 at a time, TP, and then they rank the top 4 of them. So you're asked.
Okay.
Everyone in the room is asked to submit their top 6 teams, and then from those 6, they rank 1 through 4, and then the 2 not ranked go to the next grouping along with 4 new teams, and then that next 4 is ranked, and then the 2 that are not ranked out of that 6 get 4 more newcomers, and that's how you get it all the way up to 16. And then at that point, you group in groups of 4, and you rate 3 of the 4 to get you to the 25. So the method is you rank 4, 4, 4, 4, and then 3, 3, 3, and you have your top 25 teams. But yes, we're getting closer and closer to seeing Notre Dame and Miami in that same grouping, where the discussion in the room will focus much more heavily on head-to-head. But look, Notre Dame is controlling what it can control now and what it's had to control since starting the season 0-2 by a combined 4 points. What else sticks out to you about today's performance, TP, particularly maybe along the offensive line, in addition to some of your other thoughts?
I mean, they continue to produce. A ton of credit to Joe Otting and Sullivan Absher, and I'll have to, as always, look at the game a little bit more closely and focus on those guys. Well, here's what happens. We have an opportunity to sit down and watch it again, and I chart the game. So when I'm rewatching it, I know what the next play is. And so I can focus on certain aspects, knowing what the next play is. And that's where I get an opportunity to really, really focus on what the offensive line is doing. But let me just jump to an individual stat, John, that involves the offensive line, because I was a mere 19-year-old when Vegas Ferguson rushed for 1,487 yards in 1979, and but he needed 301 carries to do that. Jeremiyah Love is 131 yards behind Vegas Ferguson, but he's had 116 fewer carries. So he'd have to gain, if he ended up with the same amount of carries as Vegas Ferguson, he'd have to gain 1 yard per his 116 carries in order to fall short of Vegas Ferguson. And he averaged 21.4 tonight. So I don't think there's going to be too many 1 yard runs in his future. But, just the productivity of him with behind that offensive line, they're doing a great job. The tight ends block it. I think Eli Raridan, again, I want to watch it closer, but I know how well he blocked last week. They're just playing such quality football, and to be ready to, like, this is crunch time. This is November. Marcus Freeman is preaching to these guys day after day after day, and they were ready to play. They're always ready to play. This was maybe an easier team to be ready to play against because they've struggled so much, and yet you just had a massively emotional game at Pittsburgh where everybody within the organization felt like they were disrespected by some commentary during the week. And so, I covered the Lou Holtz era, and I saw letdowns. I saw letdowns frequently, from week to week, sometimes against bad opponents. Marcus Freeman doesn't allow it to happen. And in so doing, it's the players that really aren't allowing it to happen, but he's the one preaching the gospel, and they're buying into it. So I just, again, I worry about KVA being ready because the stakes are going to be higher, especially after the next game. I think Stanford will put up a much better fight than Syracuse did, just because I think, although their statistics don't necessarily say it, including their scoring offense and scoring defense, I think Andrew Luck's, the impression that he has left on that program, I think there's an uptick in what they've been doing. I think you talked about that on our podcast Monday or Thursday it would have been. But it's not going to be enough because Marcus will have them ready. It's astonishing to me that 2 years in a row you have to win 10 games in a row to make the playoffs. And damn if he isn't going to do it 2 years in a row.
Yeah, and to your Jeremiyah Love notes and what he's doing statistically, I absolutely love this. 8 carries today, a mere 8 carries for that $171 and 3 touchdowns, gives him 185 carries on the year. And now after today, he went over 1,300 rushing yards on the season, and 3 more rushing touchdowns gives him 17 rushing touchdowns on the year. And then he also has 3 receiving touchdowns. So he's sitting at 20 touchdowns, obviously among the nation's leaders in that regard. His average yards per carry, sensational. And then the way that he scored today, running away from the Syracuse defense, he made angles where there were not angles. And I think that shows you just that he is a special, transcendent player at that running back position.
And we've seen it so many times now that you absolutely expect it to happen. But when he breaks through that first wave, and he absolutely knows that nobody's going to catch him, and he runs, he doesn't dog it. He maybe did a little bit on that last one, but again, nobody's close to him, and he just has such a great feel for his own game. I think about the spin moves that he's done and how we talk to him about how he works on those. He is such a high IQ football player, high IQ running back, that he knows exactly how much time he has with the guys that are pursuing him. And, he's not the guy that let's go with the football before he gets to the goal line. When he felt a little bit of pressure, he covers it up. He's still fundamentally sound, and he's got to be in New York City. It's an injustice if he isn't.
Yeah, and people know that have come to appreciate my real-time stats. I appreciate the fact that people indulge me with those. So I do want to read just a few of those to you, TP, and to our viewers and listeners of the weekly Irish Illustrated Overtime. Again, I'm John Brice of both Irish Illustrated and Football Scoop. He is Tim Priester, the vet of Irish Illustrated. Dan Molyneux, I don't know that I've ever seen a more dominating performance, certainly not against a fellow power conference team. And I don't care about injuries and all of that. We're in a day and age where you can have up to 105 scholarship players, and you've got extra players on your roster, and you're still a team that won 10 games a year ago, even if you had to reboot this season and then also have dealt with injuries. But here's some quick real-time stats, because these are just staggering. Okay, TP, the game officially kicked off at 3:32 p.m. At 3:34 p.m., Jalen Stroman records a pick six. Bam, 7-0 Notre Dame. At 3:39 p.m., Jalen Stroman deflects and blocks a punt that goes 20 yards or so into the air, where it's caught by Luke Talich. Bam, touchdown at 3:39 p.m. off of that play. At 3:47 p.m., Leonard Moore pick six. It's 21-0, 15 minutes after kickoff, 5 minutes and change after game clock, and it's 21-0. Notre Dame has not had an offensive play. Finally, at 3:58 p.m., Notre Dame has its first offensive play. At 3:59 p.m., Notre Dame has its first offensive touchdown. I have never – you ask if I've ever seen a more dominant performance. I don't think that I have. Again, not against another power conference team, but I have never ever seen a first quarter like that or an opening sequence like that where it was 28-0 and Notre Dame had snapped 2 offensive plays.
Well, I'll tell you, I was really impressed with Notre Dame's performance when they beat Haskell 73-0. I was blown away by – no, actually, I wasn't around for that. That was 1932, but I was aware of that score.
Like that long, TP.
No, but I, like as a kid, I had a brother I still have a brother 5 years older than me. And so like I grew up knee deep in all this. So I knew Haskell 73-0. When they talked about 49 points in the first half, I knew that was the most since Notre Dame beat American Medical 142-0. I don't quite remember the year that was well before the Haskell game, but no, I don't. And the game's changed a little bit. It's okay now to be up by a whole bunch and to allow your backups to throw the football. Not that Minchie threw a bunch, but he threw 6. I think there were times along the way Brian Kelly he'd put a backup quarterback in, or the backup offense in, he wouldn't let them run the offense. Marcus Freeman's a modern day coach, and I think we see it all across the country that you got to give those people some legitimate reps. Not that Notre Dame didn't pile anything on. Like I said, when Minchie breaks free, what's he going to do? Take a knee, fall out of bounds, step out of bounds? You just don't need to play that. You don't need to play that game. You got to give the kid an opportunity to do what he can do and score a touchdown. So I just have great admiration for Marcus Freeman's ability to get this team in a killer frame of mind. They are consistently in a killer frame of mind. I think they're now 13-2 in November, something like that. They've won 9 or 10 in a row in November. Playing really great football. Deserve to be in the playoffs. It's unfortunate. We know this now that with a 14 or with a 12-team format, there are too many 10-2 teams for everybody to be well served at the end of it all. And I think we're gonna find it's going to be a situation like that. I'm not saying Notre Dame's not going to make it, but there are probably going to be a couple 10-2 teams that won't.
Yeah, and Notre Dame again not really getting any help thus far today. Or as we scoreboard watch, that USC game has gone final. Trojans fall at Oregon 42-27. Utah, which was down 10, which was down double digits for much of the fourth quarter, has clawed back to make that a 47-44 game. The Utes trail by 3 with 2 minutes and 47 seconds left, and Utah does have all 3 of its timeouts, so we'll see if the Utes try an onside kick or if they like to kick deep and play defense, which if they play defense, it'll be the first time all day because Kansas State has 567 yards of offense and those 47 points. Oklahoma was not impressive to me today, sort of lumbering past a Missouri team that's also had no shortage of severe quarterback injuries this year. And they're led by Hardy, their running back, but he was completely bottled up today. 17-6, I believe, was the final score in that contest. Notre Dame's not going to jump Oklahoma, but Oklahoma showed that it's still a very vulnerable team, and that's a Missouri team that started 5-0 and now has lost 4 of 5 games here down the stretch. So those are some other scoreboard moments of note thus far today. BYU getting ready to kick off at Cincinnati. Again, I know the debate there. Pete Sampson and I talked about it in the press box tonight. And, he was like, I like that buffer zone. If I'm Notre Dame, I want to keep Utah and BYU. And I get that, but I still just think it's a potential bad scenario for Notre Dame if BYU is 11-1 and maybe has a close loss to a Texas Tech in the Big 12 championship.
Yeah. Let me say this about USC. And they've been, their offense has been really impressive. But you know what? You don't deserve to be in the playoffs. And the reason is you're just not damn good enough on defense. And I realize playing Oregon at Oregon, 42 points, that happens to a lot of teams. But you're just not good enough on defense. And so they're not going to the playoffs, and they don't deserve to because, well, what Notre Dame did to them physically beat the daylights out of them the same way Notre Dame did when they played Pittsburgh. You're just not good enough on that side of the football. So, you get to go to a bowl game where you're going to have a whole bunch of players opt out. And Lincoln Riley, may lose a bowl game because he doesn't have enough good players to play because they don't have a good enough defense to make the playoffs.
Yeah, valid point right there. I will say in an early game that could do some very positive things for Notre Dame. Pittsburgh is ahead 7-0 on the road at Georgia Tech. Of course, Georgia Tech, a one-loss team in the ACC. A Pitt win tonight would keep Pitt's chances alive of going to that ACC championship, while also continuing to boost Notre Dame's strength of record and make the ACC perhaps rethink some of those tweets about Team A versus Team B when Notre Dame just dismantled a Pitt team that, again, admittedly very, very early, but has proved itself undaunted going on the road to take an early 7-0 lead. TP, anything else you want to add to wrap up this week's Irish Illustrated Overtime? Really appreciate you carving out time to join us on the show this week and provide your insight.
Well, my pleasure. I know I've been absent. I've been on the insiders or the instant analysis as opposed to this side of it, but it just strikes me the big play capability of this Notre Dame team. I mean, these are the touchdowns. Stroman, 44 yards. Tellitz, 22. Leonard Moore, 46. Jeremiyah Love, 45. Price, 58. Love, 68. Aeneas Williams was 30, and Kenny Minchie was 25. It's just such an explosive team on both offense and defense. This is a team that's peaking. Let's just hope that it all works out when the committee is all done judging everything. And again, I want to bring up a point I did on Thursday. And maybe I'm crazy in saying this. I don't hear anybody else saying it, so maybe I am crazy. But nobody tasked this commission to be right, to have the final answers on November 22nd or November 29th. They were tasked with having the correct answers as to who should be in the playoffs when they vote for the last time after the conference championship game. So let's wait to see how that goes. The uproar this week about the committee, and I pointed out the former coaches on the committee. What? Those guys are stupid. The guy Mark D'Antonio doesn't know what he's talking about. I just think that we need. But that's the sports world we live in now. It's a snap judgment on everything. I read a column called Snap Judgment, so I'm just as guilty as everybody else, I guess. But let's see what happens. I think by and large it's going to work out pretty well. Hopefully it works out pretty well for Notre Dame.
Yeah, and to that end, and we'll kind of wrap it up here, Utah is going to get the ball back with a chance to perhaps score late with a field goal or a touchdown that would win it. A field goal would likely send it to overtime, but they've burned all their timeouts and forced Kansas State to punt, and so they have the ball near midfield with 2:25 to go, down 47-44. If they're able to rally, that might keep a little bit of buffer. I'm not sure if Utah could be dinged even with a win at this point in time, if Miami might not leapfrog them as much as Utah has struggled with a very pedestrian Kansas State team. I would note this about the Irish as they won their 9th in a row today. TP, 7 of those 9 wins, if I'm not mistaken, have come by 21 or more points. All 9 of those wins have come by 10 or more points, and 8 of those 9 have come by 15 or more points. So just a real dominant stretch. Notre Dame has done exactly what it's needed to do. It's peaking on defense. It's highly explosive on offense. Okay, T. Manning, I'll ask this because we're not quite to 30 minutes, and we'd like to try and at least deliver 30 minutes of show to you each week. So you have to ask, after such an amazing win, what is one critique you have to make of the team? TP, you go first. And then
I don't know that I'm going to just grab a stat from today's game. I think my point would be that just because they did this to Syracuse doesn't mean that they've solved all their problems in the goal-to-go situations. In fact, it took them till third down to score tonight on goal-to-go. So help me out, JB. I don't know that there's one specific critique from the night.
Here's what I'll say. All I'll say is need to see some continued growth from the reserve defense, because for the second week in a row, that's the only unit that's allowed a touchdown. So
fair enough.
The reserves last week at Pitt. It was the reserves that couldn't quite a number of times get Syracuse off the field on a 12-play drive. So that's it. We didn't see a field goal attempt, so we don't know if we could continue to critique that. They had a little bit of leakage in their opening kickoff, but then Stroman erased that and erased Syracuse's good field position with the first of Notre Dame's 3 interceptions, the first of Notre Dame's 3 non-offensive touchdowns, and that's going to put a bow on a 70-7 win. TP, thanks so much for joining us. This has been Irish Illustrated's Overtime Live. For the Dean, Tim Priester, for our producer, Tom Zwiller, I'm John Brice of Irish Illustrated Football Scoop. Until the next one, enjoy this one.